I know with work schedules and everything, it's hard to get from one place to the next, but I want to welcome everyone to the Data Analytics Bootcamp Data Visualization course. And this is an exciting course. Of course, we'll have 5 classes like we always do, but we are going to be covering data visualization, which is always done at the tail end of a boot camp because presenting the insights that we've gained from data analysis is the most exciting part, but it's also a very pivotal meaning part because we typically are sharing insight for the reasons of either conveying, you know, the importance of something, maybe driving home the reason to allocate resources from a budget for a project. There's always a critical reason why we're sharing our insights. The insights are supposed to teach us something. They're supposed to allow us to make decisions. So when you're sharing those insights with stakeholders, or an audience, they may be technical or not technical. They may have a vested interest in the project and or topic that you're sharing your information, but how you do that makes a big difference. And that's really what the focal point of this course is, what can we do to communicate effectively the insights that we've gained and at the same time keep in mind our technical audience. So for the first class, we're going to start in a safe space of Excel, which there are some interesting data visualizations that I'm going to show you that I'm going to make a bet that you maybe have not seen yet. So the first exercise we're going to do tonight, after I do the lecture part, we're going to focus on the top 5 data visualizations that you may or may not be aware of. And I'm just going to show you how to set up the data, create the data visualizations. Then the second part, we're going to build a data dashboard from start to finish, from scratch. And I'm hoping both of these are very helpful. This is again part one of 2 parts. Each week we're going to be diving deeper. So the first 2 weeks we're going to be doing Excel. And you can see from the course on Open Hub what we're going to be doing each week. So, one thing I want to encourage you to do when you're working on homework, which I know nobody wants to hear about homework at this juncture, but there is going to be homework, right? So, one of the things that I want you to encourage, I want to encourage you to do is think about how can I apply whatever skills I have for communication to my data science visualization skills? So the first 2 weeks are going to be doing all of this in Excel. Then we're going to, in class 3, go back to R and use something called Shiny and create a Shiny app that is a dashboard app. Okay. Now, in that course, you're going to, if you've taken any of the web courses, you're going to see a mixture of different code. There's going to be some JavaScript in there. There's going to be some R script in there. But for those of you that maybe are taking, jumping in later on in the, we'll say the program, don't worry. We have folks to get you caught up and get you where you need to be. So don't be intimidated by that. But what's really cool is it's interactive. And when it's interactive, that means your audience can actually work with it. So that's class 3. And then class 4 and 5, we're doing Tableau. Tableau is a software. There is a cloud version, so you won't have to buy it. Aw shucks, right? We don't have to pay for stuff. um, Tableau can be expensive, thank you. So I'm going to show you how to use Tableau Public and how to build those dashboards in the cloud and basically create a public space where you could share your handiwork with a employer or a potential client or what have you. So there'll be 2 parts to the Tableau course or class, I should say. So that's a lot in a short span of time. Now, why am I waxing poetic about this? We will be having a day at the end of our boot camp for students to showcase their work. This is super important. All right. You'll get more information about it in a little bit, as things progress, but you will get a chance to showcase a product or project that you've worked on that you want to basically brag to the world about. right? Now, why is this important? When you are networking and doing career development and going to job fairs and things like that, having the ability to share that information with potential employers or network opportunities is fabulous. There's a lot of wow factor. So, building that showcase and getting that experience will be very valuable. So, this is where you want to take advantage of office hours and things like that if you need assistance to get caught up or just to figure out what to do. Okay. All right. So, without further ado, I am going to go into the lecture notes and get that going, and then we will proceed to our first exercise. All right. And everyone should have access to the resources. I mentioned it earlier, but let me just quickly mention it again. In the Open Hub shared space that we, share the files and such, you will see a starter dashboard file. We're going to do that second. So you can download it, have it handy. All right. You're going to also see the homework and you're going to see the lecture notes. So just download any of the files that you see for this week so you have them ready. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and get this going. Okay. And let me move this out of the way. Okay. All right. So you may be wondering what a data visualization is, and you might think, oh, it's just a thing, it's just a picture, it's just a chart. Well, yes and no. So data visualizations are typically connected to data sources. So that's one defining difference. Now, the data source might be something that you created, or it might be a data source that you are pointing to at a different location. So maybe on a network or in the cloud. And the data visualization is typically going to either be static or interactive, or dynamic is another word for interactive. Static is basically going to be something the user cannot interact with other than looking at it and printing it, right? So an infographic is an example. A dashboard is typically done for interactive reasons, and that allows the user to access using different visual controls, widgets that they can, maybe spinners and slide bars and things like that, that they can increase, decrease, and see the changes in the patterns and the trends. So a data dashboard is great if it is connected to good data, right? We wouldn't want them working with bad data, but it also gives them the flexibility to focus on something that they're interested in. So an example is, do I want to see the whole year or do I want to focus just on 1 month? Do I want to filter through the data perhaps? But again, I'm looking at the data using graphics to show me what the data means to get at those patterns and trends. So as a designer, someone who is building these visualizations, you have to ask yourself what it is likely that they will want to see. What would be meaningful? And everything is based on context, right? So we don't want to say what's meaningful to me, what's meaningful to the end user or the audience. That's the key question. So some example data visualizations, and we're actually going to build these in our first exercise, are spark lines, heat maps, gauges, waterfalls, funnels, pivot tables, timelines, and slicers. Now, we have done some pivot tables prior, but you probably could use a refresher in pivot tables because they tend to just, you go to do a pivot table and you forget what the heck it was you did. So we're just going to go back to pivot tables just to bring that information back in case you forgot. But I bet you a lot of you have not used some of these, and they're very cool. So let's talk about what they are. So a spark line is typically going to be located to the right of the cell that it's describing. All right. So it's used to show trends in a series of values. So like increases, decreases. The best example I could give you is the stock market. So the price went up. The price per share went up, it went down, up, down, up, down. So a spark line will show those trends over time. So anytime you think about data being described in a series of values. It could be time based, it could be dollar value based. So spark lines are often used to show seasonality. So, for example, over the first 3 months of the year or over the quarter, did things go up? Did they go down? Or did they maybe seesaw, right? Now, a season can be a day, a season can be a month, it could be a week, it could be, whatever you decide that temporal plane is or that time-based plane, and it could be very specific to a very specific goal, right? So we can't say that everybody's seasonality goals are going to be different, are the same, right? So it's a preferred unit of time. Now, a heat map is basically a data visualization that's used to show strength. You're showing the strength of, two things compared to each other or differentiation in numbers, but you're using colors. So the darker, the more richer the color, the more prevalent or the more, concentrated, and the more lighter, the less concentrated, less prevalent. So that's typically the contrast is what shows the meaning between data areas. So when you look at, what conditions should I utilize, you can tweak those so that the contrast aligns with your data. Okay. Again, the heat map is always going to be linked to the data, and as the data changes, in the case of, excuse me, all of these data visualizations, as the data changes, the heat map or the spark line, whatever it is, will update. Now, what's kind of cool about that is it's dynamic in that it's linked and refreshes as needed. So we all know that data that is current has a lot of meaning. If something's historic, well, we could use that data to maybe make inferences about future, but we can't say, well, what's happening right now? What's happening today? If I'm looking at something from, let's say, second quarter of last year, well, okay, what has changed? Well, we've had some holidays, the new year, maybe new prices. Everything changes, and we know that. So always know what you're linked to and what data is there. That's the other thing. If you link to bad data, your heat map will reflect bad data. Your spark lines will reflect bad data. And again, you have to think about, we're communicating insights. Are they good insights or bad? Are they accurate or not? Just think about that. Now, a gauge chart, traditionally, a gauge chart is not attempted because it involves blending two styles of charts together. But I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, what is a gauge chart used for? Just like it sounds, like a speedometer, right? It looks at the minimum, the maximum, and the current value, and it looks at distance. So if you want to see how close are we to our goal, that would be a gauge chart. Or how fast are we going? Wait, yeah, that's a speedometer, but you get the idea. If our goal is to get to a certain point, so for example, we want to have, X amount of tickets sold for an event, and we're 50% there, we can gauge where we're at to our goal. It's very, very useful as a chart. And again, very useful in, a dynamic interactive style, like a fundraiser, right? You need to know, and that chart should reflect new funds coming in. Going to show you how to do that. So, of course, it uses color, and the color shows you using a spin button, that you can increase and decrease values. Basically, our gauge chart is also known as a speedometer chart. So, if you're ever proposing to use one of these to someone, you might say to them, well, are you looking at seeing where we're at to our goal? Maybe it's a project or something. They may say, yeah, that would be very useful. Okay, I'm going to recommend a speedometer chart. They're going to maybe resonate with that terminology a little bit better. So that's another word for a gauge chart. Now, a waterfall is exactly like it sounds. It's basically looking at running totals over time, but a visualization of that. So you can take a waterfall chart and show both positive and negative values against the original to show highs and lows over time. So the colors again have meaning, and it typically will be, linked to both positive and negative values. Now, that being said, if you're working with stakeholders that have color blindness and visual issues, you always want to think about, well, okay, let's say I can't use color. I can actually use contrast, which is a Gestalt principle in data visualization. So the darks in the lights, right? They may not see the two different colors, like the green and the red, but they will see it. One is darker and one is lighter. So just think, if I were to convey this information to sight challenged folks, what would be the best way to approach this? Again, always relevant, right? You always want to be thinking about these things. All right, a funnel chart. Now, a funnel chart sounds exactly what it is. It's a funnel chart. We start here and we go through a process, right? So you look at a process over time. So let me give you an example. Um, I know that I have to go to motor vehicle. Oi, right? I don't want to go to motor vehicle. Please don't make me go, but you have to. So the process unfolds over time. Now, it feels like eons, but we could actually depict you moving through the funnel of your process going through motor vehicle and show the decrease or the increase in time. So, you're like fourth person from the counter. Well, you're getting closer, right? So you're going through the funnel and then they take a lunch break and everything stops. So we could literally show how far you are to getting to your goal of getting to the desk, getting your whatever it is, license plate or whatever, and leaving. So that's a common use case for the funnel, is a sales funnel. Now I used a different example, but a sales funnel typically shows, as you come through as a lead into the sales funnel, they introduce the product, they maybe give you a sample, but you're not really a customer yet because you haven't purchased. And then eventually you might convert to a customer. So then you complete the funnel. So you get the idea. I just thought the motor vehicle would be kind of cool. Um, all right, pivot tables, right? I think a lot of you have worked with pivot tables, but it's really about summarizing data. You don't get to see a lot of granular data in a pivot table. It's really for, taking those, totals, those grand totals and things, or multiplication thing that, at the bottom. That's what a pivot table is going to be used for. Now, why is it useful? Because the end user that's looking at the pivot table can interact with it, but also they can drill down through the data to get to the totals. So looking at patterns in large data sets are really what pivot tables are about. What's super cool is you can actually build dashboards with pivot tables, and I'm going to show you how to do that tonight. Okay, so pivot tables, again, another data visualization, very important. Now, a timeline. You can assume that a timeline is going to be so relevant because events happen over time, right? It could be, for example, let's say you're a salesperson and you need to show how many individuals you've maybe demonstrated the product to, and over the first quarter you have to keep a timeline of those series of events that you've done, right? So you might show milestones. Maybe your boss has set goals for you, and you maybe want to show all of the trade shows you've gone to, any logical stage that ties to your performance goals. So you would use different colors. And if you're familiar with a Gantt chart is typically used to track project progress. You can think of, going through the first
I'm
quarter
sorry, what
and
kind of chart? What kind
Gantt,
of chart? Oh,
Gantt.
okay.
It's
Gans. Yeah, 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 I
Gantt. Yep.
remember. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
So a Gantt chart can actually be used to track, software development projects or any type of project. And it uses basically timelines. It uses, a budget amount of time and resources, and it then tracks the extent to which reached your deliverables, your goal. So anything that has a process, a series of events, we started it February 1st, we ended it March 1st. What did we get done during that time frame? Did we meet all of our goals? Or what maybe was phase 3 over budget by 3 days, right? And then of course the boss is yelling at you because you were over. But maybe you brought the project under budget, and so overall things are fine. How would you justify, those days. You have to have data to support it. So that's the other piece of it. By having clear timelines, you're able to recollect what you did, right? And it may be a team environment, but also justify why you did certain things, because there's going to be notes in those documents, in the chart and what have you. So a slicer is exactly as it sounds. A slicer is used to filter data. But what's cool is you can put a slicer out on a dashboard and let the end user manipulate the data and filter the data. So one benefit is that the state of the filter can easily be seen. If I make a selection, I know that I filtered by a specific value, or I filtered by a specific item. So a lot of times when you start, we'll say, drilling through the data, you forget where you're at and you don't know if you're seeing all of it or just a portion of it. The slicer shows you visually that, okay, it's filtered by this. You can literally see that not all of the information is there, right? And of course, you can then refresh it and bring everything back. So the main difference between a slicer and a pivot table is that the slicer shows you the visualization of all data, all the detail, and a pivot table summarizes. So if your goal
Mm.
is to show the detail, the granular pieces, go for a slicer. If the goal is to summarize and just show summary data and not the details, then use a pivot table. All right, and that's usually the primary consideration, slicer or not. All right, so spark lines, as I said earlier, they show trends. It's like a stock market type of scenario. Hopefully that makes sense. We're going to do that first. But to sum up, data visualizations can either be static or dynamic, depending on the goals. Now, one thing to think about is you could have a dashboard where some of the dashboard is static and they can only look at it, and other portions of the dashboard are dynamic or interactive. If that's the case, your training of folks on how to use the dashboard would be essential, because they're going to make an assumption that I can interact with all this goodies, right? So you want to also think about when we're teaching folks on how to use the visualizations. We want to make sure they understand what it is we're giving them. So a static version of an infographic, or is an infographic, I should say, is pretty much, here's an image and it becomes very clear that I can click on it, but nothing happens. I could print it if they allow me, but there's not a lot of stuff I can do here other than look at the infographic. Now, are infographics bad? Absolutely not. If someone wants something in printed form, that would be an infographic because it's a snapshot. You can't print the interactive aspect, right? You can only print a snapshot of what's on the screen. So an infographic is useful, and so you don't want to discount it. Infographics are used all the time. An example of a dynamic version, of course, is an interactive dashboard. This updates when the user chooses options of interest. This is very, very favored for cases where the audience has different goals for what they want to know, or the audience has different goals for the insight that they are seeking. Think of it, the manager versus the employee, right? If the employee has access to the dashboard and they're going through it, they're applying their worldview to that search process, whereas the manager is going to be thinking about it in their frame of reference. So it could be two separate goal patterns, right? User patterns, but one dashboard that serves both. How cool is that? Now, that doesn't happen by accident. That happens by you understanding that I may have this continuum of stakeholders. So how can I support both? Either that, or you have to work and do two dashboards, which is not always the best, right? So the goal is to design around the audience and not interject your preferences as designer. So you don't want to say, well, since I'm looking at this right now, I'm going to make it do this. Uh, highly likely that you won't be getting paid to look at your own dashboard. I've never had that happen, and I don't think you will either. So again, you're basically, thinking of the other person, the other audience, not yourself. And I will say, I've had some weird asks over the years, and it's like, okay, let me get this straight. You would like this, this, and this. You always want to mirror back to them what they've asked for, and then dig deeper into what they're seeking. sometimes what they say they want is conveyed in a way that is not, they think they want X, but they really mean Y. And so sometimes having a dialogue teases it out. All right. They may think they know what they're talking about and what they're asking makes sense to them, but what they really mean is something totally different. So always have that conversation with them so that you're on the same page. Again, communication 101. All right. Questions about that? Yes, no,
So
maybe?
much. So
So,
information.
how many of you have done a data visualization and have maybe a quick story to share about your experience with it? Anybody?
The only thing I wanted to share, I work right now.
Hmm.
Every morning we work with heat maps. So we
Excellent.
had to do the numbers for example, I work with the Amazon delivery center.
Hmm.
So based on the volume that we have on the day, we decide on which conveyor belt we're going to open, how many, and how which hamper will be the highest. So going back to what you were saying about the heat map, we have colors,
Yep.
and based on the colors, I select my best associates to work on those particular areas because I know that that particular area is going to be bombarded with packages, or during the day we kind of timeline it in a sense that then we know we have RTS, which is like all the stuff that we didn't process the day before, and I know that these particular areas are going to be hit hard, so I had to make sure I move associates around. So that's interesting,
Yeah. Yeah.
that you
Well,
mentioned the heat map.
I like that example because I think a lot of us have worked with heat maps. We just don't realize it. So when it comes to resource allocation, and processes that are dynamic and that they change hourly or very frequently, we can see concentration. So going back to the conveyor, if you want to look at concentration of packages on a belt, for example, I used to work at Lipton back in the 80s in Flemington, New
Oh, wow.
Jersey. We did
Okay.
the same thing. So we would look at, and it's funny, it's like a heads up display, but it shows
Yes.
concentration, and we would know if packages were caught in the line. So we would see, very dark, blobs of stuff on the screen, and we would know we've got a blockage. So we would call out to the warehouse to have them clear it. And why do we want to do that? Because if the packages back up to the machines that are producing the boxes, they shut down. And when a machine shuts
Mm-hmm,
down,
mm-hmm.
it costs a lot of
Money,
resources to fire it
money.
back up. Money, you
Yeah.
got it. So these machines print,
Mhm.
bags per hour, or bags per minute, I should say. So they have a specific production goal. So that's a great example. So it's used in machinery production settings. It's used in manufacturing settings. So that's a great example. Another one that I can think of is a healthcare setting. So if, let's say, you have only so many beds and you start seeing a heat map of what beds are allocated on what floors, you can then start, saying, I'm going to
Ah.
pick, the fourth floor because it's light on, resource allocation. We have beds available. So now I'm going to start sending patients there because I can see what's been used versus what's available. Again, think of contrast. Dark is occupied, light is, available. It's just that classic gestalt. So very, very helpful. Again,
What about this example? I'm sorry to cut you off. Like
mhm,
an inventory manager will be really delighted to use heat map because you will know like what's light on
yep,
which area, and you just set it up that way, right? I'm
absolutely,
sure that that is
absolutely.
a good
Right. So it
tool.
all ties back to, is it connected to data that we can rely on, data that is clean and
Mm,
accurate to the minute. So if you have to make a just-in-time decision for a
right, right, right.
just-in-time manufacturing process, or a just-in-time, let's say emergency room, scenario for getting beds and patients to beds,
Hmm.
then you need to know that your data is accurate up to the minute, because you are making those just-in-time decisions. So when you're designing these, you have to think about context. How will this be used? And will it exploit or utilize the data that it's connected to in a good way? But also, what do we know about the data coming into the dashboard? right? If the
Mm.
data is 5 minutes slow or an hour slow and we've got a delay, that has implications for anything that we decide design wise for our data visualization. So remember, it's something that works together, right? You
Mhm.
could have the best dashboard, but if it's connected to data that's 60 minutes behind, then the
Well,
implications are huge. And so you want to think about, is this the best way to do it, or do I need to perhaps go to a different method, or get a different data source? It warrants having those conversations. So that's a great example. All right.
are you familiar with station focus? It's like at
No.
work again, I had to basically you will have a data that tells you how we're flowing per
Yep.
minute, per hour,
Yep.
and how many more packages we had to process. So
Mhm.
if I get on the walkie and I'm going to tell everybody how we're flowing for a minute, that has to do whether or not we stop the dock or we have to speed it up. So I
Right.
constantly had to refresh the computer
There
because
you
we
go.
are working with just in time, like it's like it has to be like to the minute data.
Absolutely. That's good that you mentioned that, because all of these things have implications for our design. When you're working on providing insight to a group of stakeholders and you're working on, even if you're designing a dashboard, which in essence could be construed as software, you have to say,
Mm-mm.
well, what are the goals? And then you pick the tool of choice. Now remember, tonight and next week we're going to be working with
Mm.
Excel. Don't underestimate the power of Excel. I'm going to give you one more example that I worked on.
Mm.
So Mallinckrodt Baker does chemical processing. Okay. And I was brought in with another engineer to work on a project where, using an old clunky computer and a lookup table in Excel, we were able to determine if the product that they were about to dump in the barrel matched a valid chemical that we owned, right? So it literally, the PLC would do a lookup to the database. If it was a valid product, it would allow that product to go into the barrel. If not, basically the red
Mm.
light would happen and they would not be allowed to dump product. So the implication is, do you have the correct barrel? Do you even possess the chemical before you allow it to
Mm.
be dumped? If you're trying to dump something, you have to then make sure it's in the right container, or else you have overflow. If you have overflow, then you have a safety and
That, right,
hazardous
right, right, right,
situation.
right.
So the budget was very small for this project. So I had to come up with an Excel dashboard of all things that could
Oh,
connect to their
okay.
machinery, to a PLC. Again, it was one of those things where I wanted glossy. They say, we ain't got time for glossy. We need to do this ASAP because of safety. And I said, all right, let's go old school. And we did, and it worked great. So don't underestimate, using what you might perceive as less glossy or pretty tools, because it serves its purpose. Okay. That's what's so important, is that it serves its purpose. Okay. All right. So to get into this exercise, we want to get into a brand new worksheet in Excel. Okay. I'm going to share my screen, and this is going to be a lot of fun. I know all of you enjoy Excel, or at least I hope you do. I'm assuming that's not good. Don't assume. Don't assume. All right. You just want to create a new workbook in Excel. And I'm going to walk you through getting the data into your workbook so you can actually create this. We're going to make, again, I promised you 5 different data visualizations starting from scratch. Okay. So everyone is in Excel. Everyone's good. Everyone has access
Yep.
to Excel. Okay, awesome, awesome. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to make column A a little bit wider so that we can type in the word health plans. And I'm going to zoom in on mine just because, it might be hard for you folks to see, or it might be hard for me to see. Oh my goodness. Truth comes out. Granny's getting old here. What can I say? All right, so let's say we wanted to show how our different health plans have performed over a span of 5 years. Let's say that's the goal. So in my first column, I'm going to have my health plan. So I'm just going to type these. You can follow as I go. Just make sure that you have everything in the right cells, because there may be cases where we need formulas. And this way, um, you're not lost when I refer to a given cell, right? So let's go with plan E. And again, I'm keeping this generic, but you will get the drill, right? And then, and I'm just typing here, so you can just follow there's no formulas actually in this one, so we're good to go. I'm just typing the data. Whoops, and I'm skipping a cell here because I'm talking here. Get it together. All right. So let's assume the last 5 years. And I'm just going to put some values in here. I'm just making stuff up. Now, normally you know, if you're pulling data live, you wouldn't be making it up, but I'm just giving you some sample data just to get us started here. Okay. Let's see here. I love making up data. I'm going to skip to there. All right. I'm going to go here. I don't know. Skip that. Mock data is always a fun time because it doesn't matter what you did, but for our purposes, you want to make sure you follow me because you want your charts to look like mine. Okay. Let's see here. And what we'll do, we'll wait till everybody gets their data in. And here I jumped a step here. Let me just, I think I want to put a value in all of the cells on this one. And again, I'm trying to emulate what data would look like in the real world. So that's why I'm being, persnickety here. It's varied. It looks variable. Data's not supposed to be following any specific pattern. Okay. And naturally you could bold, these here just to make them pretty. You don't have to. It's just for aesthetics. That's called throwing in some data, mock data. Now, the other thing we want to do at the bottom where it says sheet 1 to rename our sheet tab. And the reason we're doing that is I want to give you a workbook that you can save and study after class. We're going to call this Spark Lines because this is our demonstration of Spark Lines. So you're going to double click on your sheet tab, type in the word Spark Lines and press enter. Right? How's everyone doing? Good?
Good.
All right. Can we go forward? I don't want to leave anybody out.
Oh my gosh.
What? Anyway, okay, everyone's good. All right. So health plans and years. So let me ask you a quick question. Do you see any seasonality? It's a trick question, right? Yeah. Is there seasonality in this? Now, what this is showing, one of the first questions you're probably asking is, what does this reflect? Well, this is the number of customers in millions that we have in each plan. And basically per year. So we acquired these, we'll call them customers, but you sign up for Medicare plan or, this healthcare plan or that healthcare plan. You could think of it in those terms. Now, you might be wondering, well, the number of customers in millions, why do we have, decimals, right? It's the number of customers that we are acquiring or attempting to acquire. And if a customer is not fully through the process, or let's say they switch plans, we may have to show them in decimals because they were part of the time in one plan and part of the time in another. So that's what that means. It's might seem weird. So it's the number of customers. So do you see seasonality in this? Maybe, maybe not.
What do you mean, like in the amounts, like the spending
In
or
the
the?
worksheet at all, do you see seasonality? Can you make an inference that seasonality exists here?
No. Oh, like a pattern?
I'm
No.
sorry?
Like, do
You
you mean
mean
like
like a pattern?
pattern?
Well, not a pattern. Well, seasonality is an example of a pattern, but we're not looking for patterns. What would create seasonality here? Do you remember what seasonality is based on?
Oh, that I don't remember that.
Okay.
Gee.
It's based on a temporal plane, data changing over time. So now that I've said that, do you see seasonality here?
Yes, it's going higher.
Oh.
From year to year, right? Year to year.
Yeah,
So this is a year to year seasonality pattern. Whereas if it, let's say, was month to month, you'd see January, February, March, right? That would be a month to month seasonality pattern. If you saw a day pattern, it would go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? So there is a seasonality here. Now, is there a lot of granular data? No, it's summary data. Why? Because we have the number of customers in millions. So it is an aggregate amount. So that's just something to understand. When you get data and you're looking at it, assuming this was given to you, we see seasonality, we see summary data, and we also see cases where data is non-existent, which is okay. You would then ask, is this a valid scenario? In other words, why does the data not exist? And is this reasonable? Or is it flawed data? Right? So for example, in 2019, we don't have a plan D or plan E. So your logical question might be why? Maybe they didn't exist at that time. Maybe we had a plan F, but we didn't have these two. That means going to the domain and getting knowledge from it, or your client or your boss or whoever. You need to make sure that you understand why there's holes in the data. Okay. And again, assuming this was given to you, because we all know that perhaps there was an accident and maybe data was, eliminated, or the server didn't do its proper job when it exported the data. So always ask those questions. What do I see? What does it represent? Now, let me ask you another question. I'm training your eyes because you've been through a lot of data classes. Do you see any axes? Axis like X, Y. Do you see any axes?
Yes.
Okay. So give me an example where you see an intersection between X and Y. And you can describe it in the words of the columns. You know what I'm saying?
And
Where do you see an
thinking,
intersection?
at the beginning, if you say that the x-axis is 2019 and the y-axis is the numbers from 0 to 2500.
All right, so the x-axis now could go either way, but your x-axis is going to be on one. So this could be a x-axis and this could be a y-axis, or vice versa. You got it. And then the data point that gets plotted is where the intersection is. So let's say we're looking at 2019 and all the plans. This could be x-axis, this could be y-axis, or flipped, but the data values are what would show on the chart, on the data visualization. Make sense? Yes.
Plan C,
But-
Plan C has a different behavior.
Say that again.
Plan
Plan
C
C.
goes up and then goes down. So do we want to keep it?
Okay, so
Well, I thought it was an intersection there, the 41.6.
okay, wait 1 second. So plan C, you're saying has what? I didn't quite hear.
And up, it's 50, 50, 50, 58, and then it goes down.
Yes, that's correct.
So it's a little different than the other plans. So what do we do? Do we do anything different with this, the visualization because of that?
No. So assuming you got this data, and that's a really good question. So assuming you got this data and you see outliers, so what you're describing is an outlier, right? It's an unusual data point. So and that pattern jumped out at you, which is great, right? So if you see that, one thing that you would want to do is say, is this a valid data value? So you would want to try to corroborate that this is in fact correct and maybe is not a bad data point. Once you determine that it's correct, you can go with it, obviously, because it is representative of the data as it happened, right? You want to make sure that you get corroboration for it, but also that if you find out that the data value is incorrect, you would want to correct it, right? But yeah, if you see unusual things in the data, you would want to question it and then find out if it is valid. Make sense? Hopefully. Does that make sense?
What?
Whoever asked the question, I can't
Yeah,
see.
it wasn't
Yes, it
me.
does.
It
Yes, it
was
does.
Okay. So, and again, great observation there. Now, the other thing you might want to do is if you're given a data set, just check that it is credible and that it is valid before you proceed to do your whatever you're going to do. All right, so our goal here is to build spark lines. Now, spark lines are for seasonal data. So before you choose to use spark lines, you have to know if it's seasonal data. That's why I was going there, right? We don't do spark lines because we enjoy the word. We do it
I
for
have
a
a
reason.
question.
Yes.
I have a question. How do you find out if it's like real data? Do I go back to the original, like maybe library that they have, or
Well,
you know,
no,
it check against? Uh-huh.
in this case, assuming you were given the data by an individual and an organization, there are going to be departments where you can validate that data. So you would take it to whoever's in charge of giving that data to you, and it typically is going to involve, if you're working on a project, someone maybe in IT or what have you, they can do a run on the report and make sure that the data set you were given is in fact correct. So they will have system resources that they can use, software, and maybe they can run their own internal reports and run a summary report. Remember, this is just a total customers by plan per year. That's really, it's a classic aggregation report. They could run a query, if they use SQL Server or what have you, and they could make sure that yes, this is also known as a cross tabulation. So if you are given
Mm.
data and you want to make sure it's accurate, you would go to the source, and you would make sure that the data is representative of truth, right? Ground truth, right? Okay.
Okay, thank
All right. So, assuming we want to utilize spark lines, remember the spark lines are going to be revealing or providing insights for data that it is next to. So we're going to put our cursor in cell G2, and our goal is to have spark lines along here. Okay, so it's going to be to the right of each plan. So we have plan A, plan B. You see how it's going across here? So we will actually get a spark line, and that spark line is going to show us over time the customer up and down, basically the increase and decrease in customers per plan. Okay, so we're going to click in cell G2, and then we're going to go up to insert. And you notice when you go up to insert, anything that you're looking to insert into your spreadsheet, it assumes that your cursor, which is where my cursor is, that it's where you want it to be. Okay, where you want it to appear. So it could be a chart, it could be anything, right? So we're actually going to scroll over to the sparkline section of our ribbon. Okay, and we're going to choose column. So what I did is I came over here in the center and you'll see spark lines. And the data range, I'm going to move this out of the way. The data range is going to be all the data from B2 all the way down to B7, or I'm sorry, F7, B2 to F7, because that's where our data lives. Okay, that's where our data lives. Now, for location, we want it to be located. So we're going to click down here. We want it to be located between G2 and G7. All right. Now notice that's an absolute. How do we know that? It's got dollar signs in front of the G and the 2 and in front of the G and the 7. Okay. So does everyone have that? Again, data range is B2 to F7. Location range for our spark lines where we want to place them is G2 to G7. All right. And then you should get a result like this. Now, again, I'm going to zoom in a little so you can see. Does everyone have that?
No, maybe
Okay.
because I have version of that. Because I went to insert,
Okay.
start,
Insert. And
start.
spark lines is in the center here. You're clicking on column, right? Your data range is B2 to F7, and your sparkline range is G2 to G7.
You know what,
Everyone see?
yeah, don't worry, continue, because I don't think I have a spark lines here in this Excel version
Yeah,
that I have.
yeah. You want to have, what version do you have? We'll just go there. What
I
version
mean,
do you have?
I have I'm using two computers right now because I want to be able to see you and then also type.
Right.
So in my Mac computer, I just have like, I don't know, original Excel,
Yeah. You're
Microsoft
gonna have to have
Excel.
a newer edition. Yeah,
And,
because this
and
is
then
actually
this one,
something they provided in a newer edition. You don't have
yeah, I do
365?
have, yeah, I do have 265 on this one. That's why I say go ahead, because I'm like, damn, I used the wrong computer. I do have 365.
Ah,
I don't
okay,
have it on
okay.
the Mac.
Oh, all right. So what I would encourage you to do is, afterwards watch the video, and this way, you could actually practice it. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So for those of you that maybe aren't sure, this is the values you should have for your data range. B2 to F7 for your data range, and then your location range for your spark lines is G2 to G7. All right. So let's work on plan A. If you were to derive insights from the spark lines that you created for plan A, what would those insights be? Describe it to me. I'm your customer and I want to know.
Consistent growth.
Yes, growth, exactly. So we have constant, consistent growth over time. So from 2019 to 2023, we have basically an upward trend. So we have a growth pattern, right? There's no decline, it's all growth. What about plan B?
Increase.
Same thing, right? We have a growth pattern. So plan A and
Mm-hmm.
plan B both had growth patterns. What other plans had growth patterns?
The F
Okay,
and a little bit
F
of the E
did,
also.
E did,
E,
what else?
D
D,
as well. But what the heck happened to C?
C, that's a good question.
My
So
customer is left.
So here's the thing. We see something that is not necessarily a growth pattern. One of them is different than the others, right? All the others have a trend upward. So there is a positive correlation, we could say, between the year and the plan over time. And we can see that there is an increase, but plan C is different. So then the question would become, why is that the case? And so you would want to see, if this is meaningful to your stakeholder. They may have an
Mm,
understanding as to why, and they might be able to articulate. But your goal as a data scientist is to say, this is what I observed in the data. Does this seem unusual? Does this match what you know about your organization? Keep in mind that direct observation on the part of the individuals that are getting this insight, they may be able to say, well, that makes perfect sense because blah, 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 whatever. Right.
mm,
So it's not a bad thing. It's something you had observed. It's insights. All insights are important. They're not bad. They're truth. And so you want to just think of it in those terms, right? Okay, now, if I were to ask you for an example of data that could be used in spark lines, give me just a very simple use case for sparkline related. In other words, I have data that is blah, 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 and I think a sparkline would work for it.
Family budget.
Okay, family budget. And so what would be on the A, what would be in the A column?
Groceries.
The categories, right? So the categories of spending, right? What would be across the top in row one?
the month.
The months, right? So you could see over time, are we increasing our spending? Are we decreasing our spending? Or, when Junior left the nest, our refrigerator bill, the budget, right? We see a
Improved.
growth pattern and then decline. Oh, he went to college. Okay, that makes sense. So that's a great example. How about an example that you might see in the workplace? Think of one that you might see in the workplace.
How about if you are a retailer and
Okay.
you want to see you have all the wholesale prices, retail prices, and then you have all of a sudden you have all these discounted items, and then you get to see all these different patterns there where over time, over the months, by the time that a holiday came, you were selling like crazy, and then you had to decrease your prices, and then you had to do like a discount or something like that. Is that a good example?
Well, so let's think about it. What would be the data values in the cells? What type of data would this be here? What you just described is a very
The
granular, but if you were looking at revenue, what would increases and decreases tell you with respect to pricing models? Would you be able to deduce that?
Not unless you make a different type of category. Like I just mentioned, like you have the wholesale price because you're looking at the big picture. You're looking at what you paid for the item, what you
Okay,
sold
if
it
you're
as,
looking at
and then what's
cost
happening
versus
to it.
retail, that's something different. All right, that's
Okay.
something different. So cost and retail are two totally different things. But if you had, let's say over here, this is product A, and you want to look at, the sales for products over time, that product over time, if you know when you introduced your pricing strategy, you might be able to tie it to it, but it's going to be very difficult unless you work at a very granular level. So if my temporal plane is based on a date when I started a marketing campaign and when I ended it, I will be able to see over time whether or not that marketing campaign was successful. However, you want to just think about how would I lay out such a spreadsheet? It's doable, but you would have to have every tick mark up here would have to reflect before the campaign, day it was implemented, the date it stopped, right? And then maybe the next campaign, and then you're looking at it per product. So let's say I'm selling bagels and I want to see when I provide a monthly coupon for bagels on, the middle of the month, and I'm looking at before and after within a given month, and I do that over each month, I can see that there's an uptick in sales when the coupon is used, right? And then it goes down and up and down. So maybe that's a sign that people want, something more affordable or they like a bargain, right? So if you start seeing one of these month after month, now you have seasonality in your data and you can say, all right, I see a pattern here. And I would ask myself the question, do customers stop buying my product because they don't have a coupon? If the answer is no, then does it behoove me? Will I increase volume by giving maybe 2 coupons a month? Right? Something to think about. But again, the
Excellent.
spark lines will help you because the spark lines will stretch out all the data going across, right? And you'll be able to see like the heartbeat of your product sales, right? Your bagel sales. And you'll be able to see those trends. And it's kind of exciting when you do that. Here we're looking at, year on year. And so, obviously we're
Right.
seeing, aggregate data, but you can get more granular provided that your this temporal plane is granular with your goals, whatever it is you're looking for.
Could you do like a monthly thing where the months are on the top and then your bagels are like raisin bagels, everything bagel, everything. And then you want to see what's the best seller and all that stuff, right?
Well, you could use
the
it to look at
sparkling.
bestseller, but bestseller, the reason you would use a spark line is the seasonality. So we might be looking for bestseller, but now we're looking at based on what
When
time
did it
frame.
cord?
Right. Right. So time frame, just think my temporal plane. What do I need? What do I care about up here? Because this part's one thing, but in order to use spark lines, we have to have this part, the seasonality
Got it.
part. Yep. Okay. Yay. All right. Let's go to another one. So we're going to put another sheet tab in. So down below next to your Sparkline sheet tab, you want to put another tab in. And we're going to call this one a heat map. Why not? Because that's the next one we're doing. Okay. Now I'm going to make this sheet a little bigger so you can see. And again, I'm going to go with some data that we can basically display as a heat map. So let's do region, and we're going to go with north, south, east, and west. Oops. Helps if I don't get stuck in my keyboard. That's not good. All right. And west. All right. And then, like all good charts that intersect, we're going to go with some product groups. Let's do, I don't know, bread and rolls. And I'll make this bigger so you can see. And we'll go with pastries, donuts, and I don't know, cakes. Why not? All right. So let's say we're looking at comparing the number of cases we sold in each region for each product. Let's just make that our example. So I don't know, let's do 200, 100, 300, 400. For pastries, we'll do 400, whoops, my goodness. I didn't want to skip that. And I wanted to see, don't grow your fingernails. It gets bad. You can't type. All right. And let's do 250. Again, we're just putting some mock data in here just to demonstrate how you could use data to do a heat map. Oh, I don't know, 150. And then cakes, we'll do 100, we'll do 50. That's an outlier in case you didn't know. And voila. Okay, so we have some data. And just to make it easier to see, I'll just do this. And, you know, I can center it. Let's make it bold so we can see, and we'll center it. All right. And this guy, I'll make left. All right. Pretty cool, right? We have data. Now, what data do we have? If you were to describe it to someone, I kind of just said it before, but tell me what you see. Again, we're thinking of cases of product that we sold.
These are my distribution centers located in the north, south, east, and west of my regions that I sell. And these are the different categories that I focus on in those regions and the
Okay.
amounts of goods that I have in each one.
Okay, so yeah, and again, if it's sales, that's one thing. So, you know, I said it was sales. It could be product on hand. It could be product left in the warehouse, you know, but you kind of get the gist, right? It's
Right.
broken down by product type, category, and location, right? It could be on hand, right? If we're doing inventory. But the one thing we can safely say is it's aggregate data. It's total data, right? So it's total of whatever we are describing. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go make sure you select your home tab, because this is where our conditional formatting is. Now, believe it or not, conditional formatting is underutilized, but we're going to click on conditional formatting. Again, you have to have your home tab selected. We're going to go down to color scales. Okay. Color scales. Now, turns out that there's many different color scales you can use, but for our purposes today, the color scales we're going to work with is the first one. Before we select it, though, we have to select our data. Notice I did not select my data, and it wants to just assign a value, right? So let's go and select our data, then click on conditional formatting, go down to color scales, and we're going to pick the first one. All right, this is called a green, yellow, red color scale. And what it does is it applies a gradient. That's exactly what it's doing. So let's go ahead and click on that. So
Nice.
we applied a heat map. It's a conditional format. So how did it come up with this? Well, it's looking at the data values, and the green values are the higher ones. As they start declining, it gets to a lighter shade of green. As it starts declining even more, it gets to like a yellow, like a greenish yellow, well, like the 250 is a greenish yellow. And then as it gets into the 200s, it goes to right? A yellow, and then it goes down to red. Well, we'll go at 150 first. It's like a reddish orange. Then it goes to a deeper orange, and then when it gets down to 50, which is sub 100, it makes it red. So what it did is it picked up the patterns in the data and it gave a heat map. So what jumps out at you? Again, data visualizations are supposed to give you insight. What jumps out at you? Like if you were to state one sentence of a conclusion that you see or insight that you gained, give me what that would be. And it could be, there's a bunch of different things you can deduce, but give me one.
Anybody?
Anybody. You have to study it for a minute, right?
Yeah.
The South doesn't
I
like.
noted.
Go ahead.
Oh, I said the
Go
South.
ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The South doesn't like cakes.
The South doesn't like cakes. There you go. There you go. Well, we have to ask ourselves, what's happening with the South and the cakes, you know? Last I checked, cake rules, but hey, so something's happening in the South when it comes to cakes, right? Now, what else do we see?
That
So if I were to
when it
pick out
comes,
East, what can we say about the East?
They love
that
donuts.
donuts sell better.
Donuts rule, right? Donuts rule in the East. What rules in
Yeah.
the North?
Pastries.
Pastries, that's right. And the West loves their
Bread and rolls.
bread and
Bagels and
rolls.
rolls.
Bread and rolls, right? So that's something that jumps out at you. Now, whenever you
Mm.
see something like this, you have to ask yourself, you know, if you're doing this for a client, you know, does this match or align with your understanding of, you know, the North, the South, the East, and the West? And they might say, yeah, or they might say no, or they might say something like, let's say this isn't sales, but maybe this is on hand. And let's say, you know, the West usually has a lot on hand of donuts. Like, what's going on with the donuts? West always has it. We always have to pull from the West. Why are they low? They, you know, they might be thinking in those terms.
Mm.
So the heat map shows concentrations and it shows patterns that jump right out at you, right?
Mhm.
So really, really important. Now, one thing I see when it comes to cakes is apparently people are on a diet because the North is light, the South is light, the East is light, and West is like, you know, trickling in. But it seems like they're not liking our cakes. So then it might ask, you
Mm.
know, you might say to yourself, well, I wonder why did we change our recipe? You know, it starts getting you into the
Mm.
mindset of what insight are we gaining? We're seeing a decline. Now, the decline is not based on seasonality, but it is a decline. And it could be total cases, total on hand, what have you. We see an overall
Mm.
decline for cakes based on the color patterns, right?
Mm.
Based on the color patterns. We have a weakness here on the cake side.
Oh, I see.
Yep. We have a weakness. We have no greens and we have no yellowish greens either. We do have a yellow, but when it comes to shading and that contrast I was talking about, overall it's
Mhm.
light. It's light. So that would warrant
Mm.
further investigation. That's pretty much all we can
Mhm.
deduce from it. Now, right now we're using a color scale that is red, green, and blue, right? But you could always customize your map using one of those other choices. For time purposes, we won't do that. You might want to play around with that when you do your homework, but you always want to think about what is the goal for the insight? What are we looking to gain? Okay.
Mm-mm.
And then that will drive your heat map. Now, we did heat maps when we did our correlational matrices, right?
Yeah.
So this is the same type of scenario. In the case of, you know, the correlation matrix, we were looking at the probability piece, right? And the extent to which two variables were what correlated, right? Here we're looking at it from a different perspective using the same visualization. How cool is that? Right? How cool is that? All right. Now, the next one we're going to, or before we do that, nope. Give me another use case for a heat map. Another case for a heat map. So if
You
you can
need
think,
another example?
yeah, another example of data that you could use and apply a heat map to.
I have one.
Okay.
like when we had the COVID cases, I know this is old news, but they
Mhm.
could real graphically kind of map out or like locate based on different places and the type of
Outbreaks.
vaccine, yeah, outbreaks and the type of vaccine that they were being given and the death deficit on that based on whether or not, you know what I mean? Like when
Yeah.
we're doing the testing
Mhm.
of the vaccine and the not credibility, but like the efficiency of them. They could use a
Right.
heat map, right? To like analyze
Absolutely.
all of that. Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, the heat map is reflecting the total count of something, right? You could
Mm,
be looking at the number of people vaccinated, or the number of people who passed from COVID, or the number of
mm-hmm.
people hospitalized. And you can maybe over here, instead of region, these are all the different local hospitals, right?
Right, right,
Right.
right.
So you'd have your hospitals over here, and then you across here, you might have a specific, could be males, females, it could be, whatever it is you're looking to compare, right? You could have up here, you could say vaccinated, non-vaccinated,
Mhm.
unknown, right? Unknown whether or not they're vaccinated. Or you could, like you said,
Age,
compare the
age,
different vaccinations that they got, or whether or not they got one or two. So there's so many different ways of comparing it, right?
and the age
Um,
group, right?
Yep, yep, absolutely, absolutely. So again, a heat map is going to give you concentrations based or colors based on the concentrations, right? You can assume that the higher the value, the darker the color, the lower the value, the redder or the opposite end of it, right? So green
Mhm.
is, in this case, we're thinking sales. So green is good, red is bad. So we've opted for a color map that aligns with our interpretation, right? So you always want to know what are we trying to do as far as interpretation, and is this color scheme valid? Okay.
Mm.
Excellent, excellent. All right, let's put another tab up here. We're going to click on our tabs at the bottom. We're going to do a gauge chart. All right, a gauge chart. And I am going to increase my screen because this one has some data that we need to put in, but then there's a lot of steps to make this happen. Remember, this is the one that we're combining charts. So I'm going to scroll up in A2. Let's just say we're looking to gauge. Let's say we have a marketing campaign and we're looking at blog subscriptions. So I'm a blogger and I need people to subscribe to my blog because the more that subscribe, the more cha-ching I get, right? So I want to track this. So I'm going to look at my blog subscriptions to see how viral I am, whether I'm popular or not, right? So blog subscriptions. So in this one, I'm going to call this subs, and let's say we have 800 right now, and we have a target. It helps if I could type a target. Let's say our target is 1,000. I don't know. We'll make it 1,000. We can always change those values. And then we need something to tell us how far we've gotten. All right. Now, how far we gotten is a function of division, right? So if I have 800, my target is 1,000. I could do a formula. So I'm going to do equals B2 divided by C2. And that's going to give me 0.80. Okay. 0.80. So I'm 80% reached my goal. Now I'm going to change it to percent because I'd like to see it in percent. Now you can also center these if for visual reasons, just for yourself for now. This is just data that we're going to be mapping out. All right. Everyone good thus far? Maybe,
Yep.
kinda. All right. Now we're going to be combining two types of charts. We need to get our data to represent what each chart will do in its how it will function. So first thing we need is we need a donut chart. So for our donut, everyone should remember, hopefully, remember when we did our quartiles. We had quartiles in Python. We had quartiles. So Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. If you don't remember, don't worry. These are going to be basically the quartile. So we have a 25th percent, we have 50, then we have another 25, and we have 100. This is going to represent the donut part of our graph. Okay. Now, obviously, there's a progress. You can kind of see the progression. It's a bell curve, kind of like a speedometer in a way. Yeah, it's a progression. So it's a progression to goal, if you want to look at it this way. Now, we are going to use a pie chart as well, and we need to have some data to support our pie chart. Now, keep in mind, anytime you do a gauge, and you need to, well, you'll see what it looks like in a second. This is how you would lay it out. So you always are going to do the same values for your donut, and you're always going to do the same values for your pie. All right, assuming that your goals are the same as this one. Okay, now 80% is going to be what? Equals, what is 80%? Anybody? Whoops.
0.8. What?
Well, it's 0.8, but if I were to type in
0.8.
80, it's 0.8. But if, and I explained it
Over.
wrong. If I have a pie chart and I want to represent a portion of it, am I going to go with multiplication or division?
Division.
Okay, division. But what if I'm taking a percentage of data that's on my board here?
Multiplication.
Very, very good. So I want it to represent 80. I have 80% up here. In other words, this right here, this cell B6 is how far I've gotten. So what I'm going to do is type a formula equals D2 times 100, because that's going to represent the slice of the pie that shows how far I got. Does everyone make sense? So it's the same thing as this, it's just represented differently. Here we're multiplying, here we divided. Why did we divide here? Because the subscribers over the target gives me the percentage reached, percentage of my goal. Here it's how big of a slice of pie am I going to represent that goal, right? I hope that makes sense. It's all about pie. Now, 1 is going to be full, right? So it's all of it. Now, we're going to explain once we build our pie, what that represents. And you're going to laugh, but it'll make sense when we do it. Now, the next thing we want, and pardon my rovers, okay? The next thing we want, students, I'm telling you, students, the next thing we want to do is we want to do some subtraction. All right, think of it as how many do we need to get to where we want to go, but we have to do subtraction. So what we're going to do is we're going to subtract from our difference between our target and our subscriptions, which is what? 200, right? The difference between these, we're then going to do what? Subtract B6 and B7. I know it sounds weird, but watch.
Negative.
Okay. Equals this minus this minus this minus, and you might not be able to type on it, so B7. Okay, I'll show you the formula here. It's equals C2 minus B2
minus B2
minus B6 and minus B7. Okay, I know it sounds very strange. It will make perfect sense. Now, what this is, it's a portion of the pie that represents halfway, 75% of the way. So it's percentage to goal, but it's in counts. It's in subscribers, okay? And you'll see it once we have the gauge. It'll make more sense because we're going to modify some of the starting numbers, these guys, and you will see what happens to these guys, okay? All right, any questions? Anyone stuck so far? Anyone need to see the formula? The wicked one, this one down here in B8. He's got a lot going on there, B8.
I'm confused as to, maybe this is from before, but like
What's the donut that you have? Are those always gonna be the same numbers, like 25, 50?
These are always going to be the same numbers. Assuming your gauge is acting like think of a speedometer and it's going this way. So when it's a quarter of the way, it's 25. When it's halfway, it's 50. When it goes to 75, it went 25. And then when it's complete, it's 100. So just think of it as a gauge, right? And I hope that makes sense. So if I start here, I'm at 25. Once I reach 50, I'm at the halfway mark. Once the distance from halfway to 75 is 25, and then 100 is complete. So it's a process gauge, right? So your donut will always be the same. It's this that may change, but keep in mind that this is a function of the distance to goal, right? So this will likely not change. You want to make sure it's mapped to this, because if you change this or this will change, and then this will change. So that's why we use a formula. This is basically not going to change because that actually represents the odometer. The odometer is fixed. It moves, and we're going to cause it to move. So this 1 is actually the odometer. It just goes back and forth as the data changes, up, down, up, down. It's like a windshield wiper. So it's always a 1. It's a sliver slice. It's a little bar that goes back and forth. So if you think of a pie and a small sliver slice that acts like a speedometer, right? And the needle on the speedometer, that's what that is. And then this, of course, is subtracting out progress forwards and backwards. So C2's target, that's where we want to be. When you subtract B2, you're saying basically subtract out where we're at, then do what? Subtract out this, because we're taking away or adding to our progress. So our pie, the slices have to change, right? Think of it this way. If you take a slice of pizza and put it back, you got to account for it, right? Right, Yulia?
Double click on the BH cell, then the formula would be highlighting the cells.
Well,
No?
it's up here. Well, I could double click, sure, if that helps.
Yes, it's more visual. That's what I'm saying.
But why are we, I understand when you subtract C2, you have to do C2 minus B2. That leaves you a quarter.
Well, C2, okay. So C2 minus B2, you're subtracting, right, target relative to where we're at relative to goal.
How far?
Right. Okay. And then B6 is our pie, which is on our gauge. The slice proportion has to change based on these numbers changing.
But aren't we going to two different, like, we're in 2 different countries almost, like the block. I guess
Just go to the end of the scenario, show everything, how it works, and then we will reverse engineer it again.
Yes. Yes. I think it would be helpful to wait until we're done with this because it will make sense. Okay. We're not done. I hope you realize that, because we don't have a data visualization on the screen yet. I think it will make sense once you see it visually, right? Here's a case in point. We can't gain insight because we don't know what it means. But once you see it, you'll be like, oh, and then we're going to reverse engineer. Okay. So we're just setting up the framework, right? So what we're going to do now is we've got our data, we've got our formulas. All right. We're going to select A5 and go down to B9. All right, this is the basis for our charts, okay? It's the starting point. Now, I had said earlier, we're going to put 2 charts in, right? Everyone remember that, I hope? So we're going to go up. Everyone has this selected, right? A5 to B9. We're going to go up to insert, and we want to go over to our charts. Now, charts, basically, there's no charts here that we want. All right. We're actually going to click on, and I hope you saw that, this little arrow at the lower right-hand corner stands for recommended charts. You can also click here, but I like to do it here. So we're going to click on that. And we want to click on the All Charts tab. So you have 2 tabs. You have a recommended charts and an all charts. Okay, we're going to go down to combo. Now, the two charts we're working with, if you, again, I'm going to demonstrate this, so just watch what I'm doing here. We have a donut and a pie. All right, it knows that because of where combos traditionally start. The first thing we want to do next to the donut choice is we want to click on that little drop down arrow where it says clustered column, and we want to scroll down and go to the pie area on their chart choices, and we're going to choose donut. It's the last one here on our pie. Okay, so it should say donut and then donut. We're then going to choose the drop down next to line. And again, this is in the pie chart area. And we're going to go down to our pie choices, and we're going to pick the first one, which is a pie chart. Okay. Now, we want to deselect the secondary axis box for the donut, and we want to place a check mark for the pie under secondary axis. So can everyone see that there?
Mine doesn't have that fancy box, but
It doesn't have what?
the selection, like it just quickly went to the graft. And it
Okay,
has
did you
four
go
colors.
to all charts and go down to combo? This is actually a combination of two different types of charts. So in order to be able to do what I'm doing, you have to be in the combo choices. So again, when you get into this, you want to click on all charts, come down to combo. You're going to choose donut next to the donut series name. Again, the series name is allowing us to identify which one we're manipulating. All right, that's why we named it, so we know donut versus pie. Hopefully that's making sense. So A5 and B5 help us identify our series so that we can do our settings. It's a visual for us as designers. All right, and again, you want to make sure that you have the secondary axis chosen for the pie, only the pie, not the donut. Everyone good thus far?
Yes.
All right, we're going to click OK. Now, our chart's not even close to being done. All right, we've got more to do. So hang with me, hang with me. All right, now I'm going to move this little box out of the way. Hopefully it's out of everybody's way. Hopefully you can see. So this is not looking like a gauge yet, but that's okay. We want to make sure that it looks exactly like what I have on the screen, though. Can everyone say yes, it does, or no, it doesn't?
Yes.
All right. Okay. All right, good. So now what we want to do is we have our format option here on our toolbar up top. Because of our chart selected, you should have format on the right. Does everyone see that there? And it will change to all of the
Yes.
format possibilities for our charts. Okay. So what we want to do, we need to rotate our pie. Okay, so we're going to come up here to the drop down on the left hand side, and we are going to choose the series called pie. Okay, the series called pie. Now let me move this out of the way. Here, let me just minimize this for now because we don't need to see ourselves at the moment. So does everyone have that selected? And you'll notice that basically your data is selected. Does everyone have that?
Yes.
All right, we're going to click on format
Mhm.
selection, and we're going to come over here to the right hand side of our screen. Notice it says angle of first slice. We're going to change that to 270 degrees. We're changing the angle of our first slice. Now what this did is it rotated our chart. Okay, so we rotated 270 degrees. Okay, everyone good thus far? The next thing is a trick. If you want to get through different slices of your chart, you're going to press Control arrow, and that's going to take you to the next part of your chart. Okay. Notice as I'm doing this, it's increasing it. Okay. You see that there? That's not what we want. So what I want you to do is, we're just getting familiar with the control and the arrow key. I want you to basically bring those pieces back together. The reason we did that is I wanted you to see that there's stuff underneath. That's going to be our gauge, okay? So for now, we have our angle of our first slice set to 270, right? Everyone good thus far?
Why did you do that? Like, why did you put it at 270? Just curious.
Oh, you don't need to start, can you start and just let us, can you show how to rotate again, please?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to undo mine just to take it back to where we were. All right.
Thank you.
So, yep. So it was here. So how did I get in here? I selected my chart, but I have to have a specific aspect of my chart chosen, right? So the series that I want is series pi, because that's what I'm manipulating as far as the rotation goes, right? You good so far? And then you see we have series options. I want the one that looks like the 3 bars. Okay. And I want to make sure that I am changing my first slice. See that there? So I'm going to change that to 270 and press enter. Everyone okay?
Yeah.
Now, if you have any explosion on your pi, like I had it at 1%, you want to just make sure that that's set to 0. We don't need any pi explosions at the moment.
Where this in the menu, in Excel menu?
I'm sorry?
Which field, which menu tab is active when you do that?
The format on chart design over on the right here.
Yeah.
So format, and then on the left, we want to choose series pi. And then we come out to over on the right-hand side. If you don't see it, do format selection. Maybe that's why you're not seeing it. And then you'll see format data series. And we're changing the secondary axis to 270. So you want to make sure that this is active, the 3 bars.
Yeah.
So, click on the chart.
Use the mouse.
The formats. Format selection.
Selection of
And let me bring you guys back so I can see. So where are you at in the process? Maybe I could help.
Okay, all good.
All good?
Yes. You didn't rotate it yet, did you?
Yeah.
You didn't rotate it yet. I know. Mikey, how are you doing?
I'm fine. I
Okay.
I got it. I got it. Yeah.
All right, so we're good thus far?
Yes.
Mhm.
All right, so just to update you, so your secondary axis should be 270. There should be no explosions in your pi, so that should be 0, right? So what we did is we changed our entire pi or series pi so that we rotated it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to click on the blue portion of our pi. And when we click on the blue portion, you'll notice on the upper left-hand corner of the screen, it'll say Series Pi 0.1. That means it's selected. So anything we do now is going to change just that portion of the pi. Does that make sense to everyone? Yes?
But you picked any area?
No, I click the blue area. I
Oh,
click the
okay.
blue portion of the pi. And then when you do that, you'll know that you clicked on the right part. It'll say Series Pi 0.1.
Selected. You see, this is selected.
Yes. So when I click on blue, I should see that it's selected over here. If not, I might have clicked the wrong thing. Everyone good?
Yes.
Okay, now what we're going to do is come over to, on the right-hand side, it says Format Data Point. So we're going to click on the little paint bucket. We're going to click on Fill, and we're going to choose No Fill. Okay,
No
Ev-
problem.
No
No
fill.
fill.
What happened?
I don't know what happened for you, but I know what happened for me.
I know what happened. I know what happened. I could interpret that
Okay,
that
okay.
painting a
I'm
Picasso
sorry?
painting. I said I could interpret a Picasso painting is the amount by, in colors.
Well, we're not done yet.
Okay.
We
Okay,
can't
go on.
interpret this yet.
Okay. Go on.
Okay, so everyone's good. They have no fill for that portion. Yes, I'm trying to take it as slow as possible so everyone gets caught up, right? So we have no fill. Now the next part is difficult. We need to select pi point 2, which is the sliver slice. The easiest way to do it when you have series pi point 1 selected is to press Control and the right arrow on your keyboard. And you'll notice that it's a sliver slice. We can barely see it. How do we know we selected it? It will show up here, series pi point 2. Okay. Everyone have that selected? We're going to go over to our fill and we're going to make this color black because that's our needle. That's our needle. That's going to tell us how fast we're speeding. Again, we're making a gauge, right? Now, to make it easy to get to the next portion, which is pi point 3, we're going to press Control and the right arrow, and we should see series pi point 3 selected. Okay. And we're going to come over to our fill and we're going to select no fill. So it should look like exactly what you see on the screen thus far. Okay. So we've basically done the pi portion. Now we're going to come up and we're going to select our donut series. So we're going to come up here, click on Series Donut. Okay. Series Donut. We're going to come back over to Format Data Series on the right-hand side. Click on the little 3 bars icon on the right. It's our series options. And we're going to change the angle, all right, the angle of the first slice to, you guessed it, 270, and press Enter. And you want to make sure that the series donut is still selected, okay? And you want to click on the yellow portion of the chart, which is series pi. You guys are doing good so far. Hang in there. Now we're going to press Control right arrow, and we have selected series pi point 1. But is that what we want? I don't think so. Everyone good so far? We have to keep pressing Control right arrow until we see that the proper thing is selected, and the proper thing is series donut point 4. So just keep pressing Control right arrow. Notice how we're toggling through our chart. We want series donut point 4. That's the easiest way to identify it. If you try to click on it, there could be things behind the other things and such. You just keep pressing Control right arrow until you see series donut point 4. Okay. Everyone good thus far? Now we're going to go to fill. What's that?
2 elements with control arrow.
Control arrow allows us to toggle through all of the elements in our chart, both charts. So we want to keep toggling through until it says series donut point 4 up here. That means the proper item in our chart is selected. All right. Everyone good? And we're going to go over to fill and we're going to choose no fill.
Voice.
Oi.
Why?
We have one more thing to do with this. Actually, 2, I lied. 1. It's looking like a gauge, right? It's getting there. Yes? So now we have to change our colors to red, green, and yellow. All right, the blue portion, again, the blue portion is going to be which part of the pie? What do you think? Let's see. If I click on the orange and have I selected each one? I don't know, right? So notice when I'm clicking on my chart, I don't know what I'm selecting. The blue and the orange are not separate, right? You see that there?
Oh,
Yeah, that is why I'm
okay.
showing you how to do the arrow technique, the control arrow, because we want to keep going until blue is selected. Now, the blue portion is which portion, the donut or the pie? Who
The
knows?
pie.
It's the pie, right? So let's keep on going until it says series donut. And I want to show you a trick here. Series donut. So I kept pressing control arrow until it said series donut, right? Notice on the right-hand side, it shows me the color of blue. I'm going to make that red. Well, that was definitely the wrong color, right? That's all the donut, right? We don't want
Right,
that.
yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to control Z to undo. So what is it we need? Well, not the series donut. That's all of it. We're going to keep arrowing, and now I see it. Series donut 0.1. See, it's hard to select portions of a chart without having a guide, and that's what this little drop down is here for. So now I know series donut 0.1 is blue, and now I'm going to change that to red. Boop. See? Then I'm going to press control arrow, right? And I'm going to make this yellow. It's just visually so much easier to do it this way. And then control arrow one more time. I'm at series donut 0.3, and I'm going to make this green. There we go. So that's an example of, a keyboard trick, right? To try and, visually to see what we're doing. Now, we don't need this down here where it says donut and pie. So we're going to select that. That's our legend. We're going to delete it. Delete the legend. Okay. We're also going to make our chart just a little smaller, but don't go too small. In fact, I went up from the lower bottom here. I like mine the size it is. I'm going to leave it. Okay, but I am going to change one thing. You see where it says chart title? I'm going to double click on chart title, and I'm going to change it to subscription goal or subscription. We'll call it subscription progress. Okay.
So what does the needle represent?
I'm going to tell you in a minute. The needle is just an odometer. I'm
So
going to show you in a second.
Okay.
We're not done. All right. So does everybody have it renamed to subscription progress? Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Are we 80% to our goal?
Yeah.
How do we know that?
The needle is in the
The
green.
needle. So let's change our subscriptions value over here in B2 to 900. Oh, that's weird. What happened?
Holy crap.
The chart is upside down.
The
Or
graph,
Well, the chart is not upside down, but
needle.
that means, excuse me?
the needle moved.
Yes, the needle moved.
But
we have. I'm
where-
sorry. I can't. Go ahead.
I have no idea. It's okay.
You have an idea. Go ahead and tell me your idea.
No, I don't.
Ah,
You
What?
fibbed? Are you fibbing? Are you fibbing? Okay. So we obviously have a problem with our needle, and this, keep in mind that I do things on purpose so that we can problem solve, right? So we know that when we reach 100% of our goal, let's change subs to 1,000, our needle should be there, right?
Right.
Okay. What if we go to 200?
Red.
Our needle should be there, right? Let's say we go to 500, which is halfway. That's at the 50% mark. Uh-oh, our needle didn't move. What happened? So something's off, right?
Needle did move.
But the
But it did not move to the correct
Well, what is the
location.
yellow supposed to be
B8,
representing?
the number in B8 changes. So what is it? What is the relevance of the needle with the numbers under the column with I? Because the numbers are changing.
The numbers are supposed to change. The
Okay.
numbers are supposed to change. So I think we're missing where I'm trying to guide you. Okay. What we've established is that we have an expectation that our donut performs like this. We know where the needle should be for 100%. We know where the needle should be for 25%. We know where the needle should be for 50%. Where should the needle be for 50%?
In the yellow.
In the
In
middle,
the
yellow.
yellow, halfway. And so we just tested. One thing I'm trying to get you to understand is that when you build a data visualization that's connected to data and you've done the configuration, you need to make sure it's valid, that it's showing correct insight. You don't just plug in numbers and say, oh, I plugged in the numbers, it's fine, because I just proved that it ain't fine, right? And that means that you do one of two things. You check your formulas. We know that we have formulas, so that's suspect. And then we check our settings for our visualization, right? Because one or the other is incorrect. And that's where I'm trying to get you to understand, right? And that's why we're doing this. If you've done it for over 30 years like I have, then I don't have to tell myself what to check when I see something that defies my expectations. If I design something as a programmer, as a data scientist, I have an expectation. It's based on my foundation of knowledge. If something happens and like I go to compile code and I get an unexpected result, what do? Does anyone remember from coding? What do we do?
Well, what do you mean? Check again, like carefully.
Okay,
look
so
and see.
I'll ask it a different way. You
Okay.
are a programmer at work, or you're working on a project for a client, and you do something, either you write some code and you get an unexpected result. After all the boot camp that you've taken, what would be your next step? What do you need to start doing? What skill set do you bring to bear?
With the code.
Check the code, okay. Yeah.
But what about if you go back to your original data that you carefully saved and left it?
Well, this
Compare
is not a data problem, because we only have 3 sets of values here that shows progress.
Your hypothesis? Is it your hypothesis that you're checking?
Check the formulas.
It's not a hypothesis, because the hypothesis is basically that if I build a progress chart, the progress chart should show progress as I conceptualize it. So at 25% of progress, I should see the needle on a portion of the chart. At 50%, I'm going to see it. So contextually, progress, we have an expectation here. But in general, when you build something, like you write code or what have you, what do you go back and check when you get an unexpected result?
So we need to check the code for the needle.
Recording.
The recording?
The formula?
No,
Okay.
we need to check the code.
Right, but so
For the needle.
you're referring to this specific example. I'm generalizing. In
Oh.
general, we look at our inputs. That's what I'm trying to get you. Inputs,
Oh, okay.
processing, and output. Remember, we're at the end of our boot camp. We got to stretch our muscles and go all the way back to the
Well,
beginning.
no, that's what we were saying. The input was the formula.
That would be input, right?
Is the coding. Yeah.
What's another example of input?
The values.
The values, perhaps now let's say we're coding and maybe we declared the variable and we use the wrong value to initialize our variable, right? So you think, where is my input coming from? Did I maybe type in my input incorrectly? So this is an input process problem, right? Now, it may be an input problem or it may be a processing problem. We know the output or the display is wrong. So display is wrong. It's either going to be input, which is formula, or processing, which is configuration of our chart. Does that make sense to everybody? And again, we're going back to stuff we learned way back, long time ago.
Rub it in.
That's right. Input, processing, and output. Okay. So what I want you to understand is whenever this happens, don't get frustrated and don't scramble to try and solve. Ask yourself before you do anything, input, processing, and output. What's suspect at this point? I need to rule out that it's an input problem. How do I do that given whatever project I'm working on? If I rule out the input, then I go to process and say, what exactly is incorrect here? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're going to do, why don't we take a quick break because it is getting late. When we come back, we're actually going to fix our problem. But you have to promise me that nobody works on it while we're away from break. Okay? All right, we're going to do this together. I wanted to do this together. Everybody got the same bad result, right? We defied our expectations. We're going to walk through and you're going to actually help fix. But no cheating during the break, okay?
Okay.
All right. All right. I'm going to stop our recording while we take a break. Why don't we come back in 10 minutes stretch? Remember, input, processing, and output. All right. I'm going to go ahead and pause. All right.
All righty.
Okay. So what I was saying, and I wanted to get this on the recording, is that you may know the steps to create a program or the steps to build a data analysis, a step to build a data visualization. But when something goes that you don't expect, you have to be able to wrangle with the pain of trying to solve the problem, right? And so what we're trying to do is give you the tools to um, attack it from a non-emotional point of view, not getting frustrated or stressed, but saying, I'm going to work through this logically. It's not about me, it's about the result. And it's a logical reason why the result did not give me what I expected, right? So it's not an indication of who you are as a programmer or a data scientist or what have you. It's a function of how well you solve problems. And so getting frustrated or upset is not going to solve the problem, right? Keeping a clear head. So that's why we're doing this. And of course, I throw in something you learned way back. But I say you learned it way back. We've been using input, processing, and output the whole time during the boot camp. So it's IPO over and over again. Everything we've done is IPO, right? Everything we've done is IPO. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again.
By
Because,
processing,
yes.
do you mean like the formulas and equations? Is that what you mean by processing?
Okay, say that again. Formula and equations. The formula is going to be processing because it accepts input. Yes.
Right, so processing is like all the stuff that's happening to get to the output.
Right. So all right. Formulas will rely on input. So some formulas are considered processing. But since a formula inherently requires values from other areas, it's relying on input. If you created a formula that didn't depend on other data, then that's pure processing. Because it's just doing something. So let's say you said, you called a function and that function knows how to create the result. Then that's really not relying on any other data. It's inherent to the function. So like pi, right? Pi is inherent that it's going to know what pi is, and it involves, circumference of a circle, and it already knows some things. It's getting input from the machine, which is the formula function. And if that's not working, then well, you want to be mad at Microsoft because they ruined Excel, right? Or right. So yeah. So there is going to be cases where it's pure input, and other cases where it's processing or maybe a combination therein. Now the formulas we did tonight is a combination. Some of the formulas are combination. Now where we made a mistake, and I did this on purpose to test you, is we did not hard code a value as input into one of our formulas. And I'm going to show you right now. And this is something you would have never guessed. But once I explain to you, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, right? So that's why we did this. Again, this is designed to get you to think critically. You will be critical thinkers when I get done with you. So do you remember where we started? This donut was a complete circle. Does everyone
Right.
remember that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and our speedometer is in a part of the circle that we got rid of because, well, we didn't want it there. Well, this part of the odometer, we'll call it a gauge, is 100% of our chart. But the whole donut is 200%. But our gauge, our indicator, is in the part of the chart we don't want. Guess what? Over here in cell B8, we said our formula should rely on input that's on the screen, right? We did equal C2 minus B2 minus B6 minus B7.
Right.
Which is something that people might be inclined to do, not realizing what the pi is all about. What we were supposed to do, and I'm going to get rid of the formula because it's bad, is think about what does this mean? So 200% of the pi is really where we start. We have to hard code that value. Now, it does not know, because how are we going to place the speedometer? We know that behind the scenes, we hid half of it. So that's 200% of what we want to see. We're only seeing half of it. All right. From that, we're then going to subtract B6 and then subtract B7. Bingo.
Oh, the formula was wrong.
That's correct. So, yeah. So again, when you're creating these little formulas on the side here, these guys don't change. Remember, these were hard-coded values. But these guys, it's very important that you get them right. So this represents the amount reached. This is probably not difficult because we know it's in D2, 100% is 2 goal. So think of 2 goal as the end of the green, right? That's 100%. The 1 reflects the little odometer, the black indicator that really is always, it's always there. It's just where it gets placed, right? That really doesn't, it's static in that it's always what it is. It's 100% of itself, as it were. But this
so why
guy,
did the 80?
Go ahead.
Why did the 80% change to 90% now? Like, and then how do we know?
Because we're at 90% of our goal.
Oh, okay, I see. Because you put 900.
Well,
You
we're
just
at
made up the
90%
number.
in D2. If we take the value in D2, B2 over C2 is 90%, which is 90 right on the chart, right? Okay. So let's
And the
try
200 came from where? I'm sorry, I got confused there.
The 200 is 200% of our chart. The half we can see and the half we can't see. So remember this
okay, because
donut.
that half is 100
Right,
and the other
right.
half is got it.
Right, and we don't want the needle moving in the part of the chart that's not visible. That's the other that's 200% of what is visible. Our gauge is visible. That's 100% of what we want to see.
So that's why we start with a 200 to minus.
Yes.
So get
Right.
rid of that other half.
Right.
Got
Think of it as proportion. There's 200% is 2 times what we actually see. We see 1/2 of the donut. We know there's another half hiding and we very carefully hid it from view, right? We know it's there, but guess what? The needle doesn't know that we can't see it and that we don't want to see it. The needle went where we told it to go, and that's because we gave it the wrong input.
So we subtract B7 because we don't want it to calculate the needle into it.
Okay, we subtract B7 because we don't want it to count the needle. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So when it's moving relative to the chart, it's only moving relative to the red, yellow, and green, not to itself. So we gotta, that's a slice of the chart. We gotta subtract that out because that's not relevant. That's just the needle, right? So we have to subtract that out. All right, let's try changing our subs value and make sure, let's test, make sure our chart's working, right? So let's go, I don't know, 400. Okay, slightly less than half. It's all All
Cool.
good, right? Let's try 100. Okay, that looks good. We're just testing here. Let's try 600. Okay, it's good. Let's try, I don't know, 750. All right, we're getting there. That's 75%, right? Let's try, oh, I don't know, 800. You see how we're testing it and making sure our data visualization's working
Mhm.
the way we expected. That's deconstructing what you built. If you're a house
Mhm.
contractor and you can't deconstruct how you built that wall, you're not going to know why the wall failed. This is the same principle. There's an expectation, and you have to go back and say, okay, what did I use for nails? What did I use for input? How did I create my formula? Well, what does the formula mean, right? And context is key. You cannot take a linear approach to what you do in data science, computer science. You have to take a nonlinear approach, meaning that you have to tease out everything and go back. And whatever you do, don't get upset about it. Say, well, it doesn't make sense. Let's see what's happening. And input, processing, and output. Now we know our output is working, and that's because our input is correct and our processing is working fine. Does that help?
Yeah,
Talk about blowing your mind, right?
I know. You fooled us.
I did. I love it. Hey, I'm always full of surprises. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. So everyone understands, yes?
Yes.
See.
Yay. C. All right. C is good. All right. Let's do another one. We're going to create another tab, or, down at the bottom, we're going to click on the little plus sign and bring down another tab. Let's do a waterfall. We've got 2 more of these to do, and then we're going to talk about homework. And we're going to work through, because I want to make sure you understand the homework. Again, everything I give you will make you think, because if you stop thinking, then you fall over, and that's not good, right? We have to be thinking. All right. I thought the gauge was pretty cool, though. Pretty cool chart, right?
Very cool. Yeah, very
Can you
cool.
imagine if you put that on a spreadsheet? Your boss would love you, right? How cool. All right. So this one, we're going to
Yeah.
work with categories, very much like we've been doing before, and values. Again, we're creating a waterfall chart. So a waterfall chart is basically showing the ups and downs of something, of categories. So increase, decrease kind of thing, right? So for our category, we always want to start somewhere. So, and if you could type, like, I don't know what I just typed there, starting value will be $100, okay? That's where we're starting. Now, this is in currency, so we want to make it currency format, okay? So we're starting at 100. It's always a good place to start. Remember, if you're going to show increase and decrease, then you want to have a place where you started. And this involves things like our expenses. Let's say we're a business. Now, there's no specific business, but you start out with some money, you get some revenue from sales, you have to pay out your advertisers, you have operating expenses. It's that type of scenario. So we're going to say product sales. And let's just say, we're going to say 50. Now, keep in mind that all of this is going to be currency. So you might want to select a bunch of cells just to make them currency. Okay. So we started at a plus. We have $100. Let's say that's what you invested. We then have product sales. That's money that came in. Now, we're just using this as an example. Hopefully we don't have just $50, but it's just an example. Now we have advertising costs, right? So advertising cost, whoops, again, my keyboard and me are not getting along tonight. Advertising costs, and now you pay out those costs. So we're going to make this a negative value. Let's make it -30, just so that we know that it's a minus amount. So -30. So we know that we paid out $30 for advertising, right? Let's say we have operating expenses, and let's say they were 20. We're keeping small values here. So -20. Okay. Now, our cost of goods sold, we're going to put it in as a positive. I'm going to explain why. Cost of goods sold, we're putting it in as a positive because that actually increases in a different, it offsets revenue. So it's, in order to offset, we have to have it in as a positive. So cost of goods sold is going to be, we'll make that $40. And then, of course, we had to pay our employee salaries. So employee salaries, and let's just make that, now this is a minus because we're paying out. Okay, so we're directly paying our employees minus $10. What can I say? And then the final result. Okay, so this is just showing increased and decrease. Okay, increase and decrease. So the final result, we're going to hard code in. Let's say this is where we landed, $130. Okay, so what we have here is data that goes up and down as we run our business. Now, as someone who teaches accounting, I'm looking at this and saying, okay, we got aggregate amounts from my QuickBooks or whatever software I'm using, and maybe this is what we did over a month's time, right? I would say, well, I wonder, is this for a month? Is this for a year? Doesn't really matter. The data, you have to understand that the data went up and down. We don't know over what period of time. The purpose is to show you how to create a waterfall chart. Right? So that's why we're just laying out the framework so I can show you how to build it. Okay. Now, this is a waterfall. So everyone has their data done?
No, hold on.
Okay.
Got it.
All right. So we have our data. It's very basic, but I think you get the gist. Now, we're going to go up to our insert menu. And before we do anything, we need to select our range, A1 to B8, the whole shebang, because this is going to be the basis for our charts, right? Our chart. So we're going to go up to recommended charts, okay, and click on that. And we're going to click on the all charts tab again because we want a special type of chart. You know, I told you charts you've never seen before or maybe messed with, and we're going to go with the waterfall. The waterfall is going to, it'll give you a preview. And if you kind of just put your mouse over the preview, it blows up for you. It's like, oh, cool, right? So we're going to click OK. And voila, there's our chart. So you're looking at your chart. Now, some of the labels on the bottom are kind of cut off, perhaps. If they are, you want to go to the lower right-hand corner and just stretch it out a little bit. And actually from the right-hand side, maybe that might do it. Just so you can see, you know, the starting, the product sales, the labels. So the right-hand side is usually a good portion, or to stretch it out, or the corner, whatever works for your screen. My screen is wide, so I went from the side. So insights, when you look at this, what insights can you gain from this? And I know it's late, so insights might not be easy to see.
Okay.
Okay, so
We should be out of business.
No. No. Someone said profit.
Yeah, it looks like we made a $30 profit.
Okay, so we made a $30 profit. So where did you, and again, I'm just asking questions. So where did you come up with that conclusion? How did you achieve that insight?
The starting value and the final result.
All right. So what you're saying is we started with 100, we ended with 130. So if we subtract our starting value, we basically made a $30 profit. Okay, that's a reasonable insight, a reasonable inference based on what you know about your business and what this reflects, right? Okay, what's another insight?
We pay the employees $10 and then we'll put operating expenses were 20. There goes our 30.
Say that again.
Okay.
We pay the employees
10 and we also spend $20 of operating expenses. There goes our profit.
Well, so what leads you to believe that our profit is gone?
It's not gone. It's almost like cutting even, you know, like you know, you just kind of like just made it.
Well, breaking even would be if we started with 100 and we ended with what?
100.
Okay, so
100.
that would be a break
But then,
even.
but wouldn't you consider that you're not really making money? I mean, you did
But that's
get
not the
30,
goal.
but you have to
That's
put
not the
it in.
goal. Remember, we don't have the
Okay.
temporal plane.
Okay.
Whatever
Got
you
it.
do, when you see a data visualization, only just like you know what data we're using, we don't have certain information at our disposal right now. So we can't make an inference that it's, over a day, over a month. This could be a minute worth of data. We don't know, right? So we have to be really careful. And when we're explaining it to someone, we have to be careful that we don't make inferences based on knowledge that's not at our disposal. So we want to be uber careful. So you're looking at just what we see on the screen. We have some data. We have a thing here. We can safely say that remember, this is increase, decrease. We started with X, we ended with Y. Some things increase, decrease over time happened, but that's all we know, right? So we want to be really careful. Now, if someone, let's say your boss or your client looks at it and say, this doesn't match what I understand to be true, then you would say, this data came from, your servers, your IT folks, and it represents something, but I was not told what time frame. Right? It could have just been a sliver slice, a moment in time. This could be from 12 o'clock to 12:05. And this is what the system showed. It's a snapshot, right? We don't know. So the inference or the insight that we gain it needs to be guided by what we know, but also guided by what we don't know. It's really important. A lot of times folks will look at what's in front of them and say, oh my gosh, we're failing as a business, but context is what drives our final conclusion, right? Very, very careful, right? All right, what else do we see here? Did we have more increases than decreases?
Yes.
Yes. So let's say I'm the owner of the business, and anytime I do a snapshot, relatively, I want to see more increase than decrease. And that to me is a sign of success. Let's say I've set a key performance indicator that I'm looking at, data over time, increases and decreases. And when I look at a waterfall snapshot, I want to see in general more increase than decrease. That means I'm doing well. Let's say that's the case. Well, then this reflects what the owner would expect, right? Because we have more increase than decrease. So it's not as bad as one might think, but that's only that I know that the owner said that to me, you see? So now I am backing up what I believe to be true based on additional information that's not here, right? Anecdotal information that I got from the owner. Pretty cool, right? All right. That's a waterfall chart. The last one we're going to do is a funnel chart. Yes.
Why is the cost of goods positive?
Why is cost of goods sold positive? Because that is a contra revenue account. All right. So that is the cost is basically going to be accounted for in our sales and our costs. So they kind of work together. All right. Whereas the expenses, that's in a different part of the spread, that's in the accounting. So it has to do with the fact that sales and cost of goods sold are both credit bearing accounts. They're on the credit side of the accounting equation, whereas expenses and salaries and advertising costs, which is also expenses, is on a different side of the accounting equation. So this is because it's dollars, think accounting, and that's why.
Okay.
Yep.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why the final result is 130 lining up with 250 on x-axis?
It's actually above it. So what this is doing is it's showing over time the subtractions and additions over time. Does that make sense? So if we start with 100, we add 50, subtract 30, right? It's basically showing over time that much fluctuation. And I know that part's probably confusing, but that's why.
Wait, what
Yeah.
was her question? Why the
Why is this
150
just
on the
slightly
eighth?
above the grid line for 250? This
Oh,
is
I
a
see.
function of additions and subtractions.
Mm.
So from an insight point of view, this represents the waterfall, the total waterfall. In other words, the net difference did not exceed 250 overall. So these values right here, basically they may serve you or not serve you. You have to ask yourself that. But see over here, we have something called total. It's total overall. Does that make sense? So if you add 130, 40, 50, and 100, what does it come out to? If you add all the blue, or add all the blues together, what do you get?
The profit. With what you
Anyone?
started and the profit.
Did
Yeah,
anyone?
the total.
What's the total?
The positives are 310.
Right.
The positives are 310. Okay, so that being said, we have 310, but we have to do what? Subtract out the oranges.
The expensive.
You got it. And when we subtract out the oranges, we land at this mark right here, which is just over 250. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's the ups and downs. It's the increase and decrease. All right, awesome. We'll do one more. Let's go and add another sheet tab. All right, and we're going to call this one funnel. So this is a funnel chart, and it is typically used for a sales funnel. You know, where you want to keep track of customers coming into your business, and they come in as leads, and they're at some stage in the sales funnel. So we're going to say stage as the first one, and let's make this awareness that they found out about your product. The next one is interest. So maybe they sent an inquiry. They're considering your product. So consideration, let's make this a little bigger. They intend to buy, so they have shown intent, and then they subsequently purchase. So it's hard work getting new customers, let me tell you. Right? So you built this brand new website, right? So we have a number of visitors, visitors. All right. So just think of it. I took a web class, I built a website, and now we're going to track whether people are subscribing to the blog or buying the product, whatever it is. We have a number of leads. Okay. We have the number of opportunities. Now that would be your exposure. How many people did you send out that marketing campaign to, right? And then the number of customers. Okay. All right, so I'm going to plug in some data values in here for the sake of time. Let's make that 2,000. We'll make this 500, 250, and 200. Number of leads, let's say 2,000. And I'm just making these up. Normally you'd have real values, real data, but we'll just make this up, just show you how to create the chart. Let's say we have 500 opportunities for interest and 100 for intent. And number of customers, we're going to say that there's a certain amount considering our product, certain amount that intend to buy, they've shown intent, and let's say 100 purchase. All right, and I'm just going to put some borders here so you can see what's what to help you see where the points are, because it might be hard to see at this hour. Yeah. At this hour, right? What screen? You have a screen? I can't even see it. All right. So does everyone understand basically the case study, the scenario that we're doing?
Yes.
All right. So we have our stage, which is this side here. This is our stage, and this is basically the values that we're tracking. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all of our data from A1 all the way over to E6, because this is the data that we're using to build our funnel. Okay. Now we're going to go back up and click on insert, and we're going to go to recommended charts, and we're going to go over to all charts, because that has all the goodies, and we're going to go down to funnel. Now this one is very easy to create, very easy to create. We're then going to click on OK. Now, just for grins and giggles, let me move mine over here, and maybe make my screen a little smaller so that you can see. What can I say? Let's do this. There we go.
I don't see it, you know.
No, I don't think we have funnel.
You don't have funnel? You should. No? Again,
Mhm.
you highlight your data, go up to insert, recommended charts, click on all charts.
Yeah, it goes from waterfall to combo.
Oh, you're kidding. You don't have funnel? Oi.
Download it as a template.
You know what? I don't know. What version do they have in the lab there?
2016.
All right, you don't have 365. That is why. That's the defining difference. Let me just verify, but I'm 99, 99 and 9/10. I should have 365 here. And of course I clicked on about, and well, you saw what happened. Come on, Cindy, click.
365.
You have 365?
Yes. Some of us do, some of us don't.
Okay, so those that have 365 have the funnel?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that being said, I honestly don't know if there is a template that you can download. That might be worth Googling when you go to do your homework. All right. If for some reason there isn't one, that's okay. Just get as far as you can in the homework. So what I'm going to do, and what I would like you to do, is save your work, because I know the library is going to close soon. I want to go over the homework quick. Save this sheet so that you have it. All right. And let's jump over to the homework, because, and let me share that screen here. Let me open it up so that we can go over it, because I don't want it to be confusing. And since some of you don't have that option, let me share the
You
screen.
do it in Google Sheets?
No, we're using Excel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now, if there is a funnel chart in Google Sheets and you want to try it, absolutely. But all the instructions I gave you tonight are specific to Excel, and there may be differences. Yeah, there may be differences. Can everyone see the homework?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So what you're going to do for homework is you're going to create an Excel workbook with 5 sheet tabs. I said sheet tables, sheet tabs, one for each of the mock use cases that you're going to come up with. All right. So you're going to come up with 5 use cases, just like we did tonight. And you're going to create each of the data visualizations, the spark lines, the heat map, the gauge, the waterfall, and the funnel. And what you want to do is just write a very small paragraph describing the problem, the use case. You want to put the data in the sheet, have the data visualization, and then just a small paragraph describing the conclusion based on the insights the data visualization provides, and upload your spreadsheet to Google Drive folder and share the link on Slack. All right. So if for some reason you have the older version of Excel, the 2016, and you want to try to do this in Google Sheets, that would be fine. Just keep in mind that my instructions are specific to the menu and all the configurations in Excel. All right. I would encourage you to, get as far as you can. If for some reason you can't do 1 or 2, just explain why, but come up with a use case. Even if you can't implement it, come up with a use case that you think would be good for that data visualization.
Where in Slack are we sharing it?
Where you normally share homework. So data homework, data science homework. So it's, or data analytics, I'm sorry, data analytics homework. Now the link that you share, just make sure it's shared to public, right? Because if you don't share it so everyone with the link can access it, we won't be able to see your goodies.
Is there any other channels we should be on? for this class?
Yes, help me out questions definitely and general. So actually, Bryant would be able to get you connected, or Yulia. They know who in the data analytics boot camp who has access to what, but those are the top 3 that I would recommend, because you post homework under homework, you ask for questions, or help rather, if you have questions on the help me out channel, and then general are things like scheduling and, different classes, when office hours is happening. The other thing too that's important is if there's a change of, we have to go to a different area of the library, or if we have to go to Zoom because the library is closed due to snow, right? So there's a lot of good alerts there. Okay. All right. Any questions? Was this helpful?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yay!
yeah,
All right.
definitely.
Awesome. So next week we're
Cool,
going to
cool,
build a
cool.
complete dashboard from start to finish.
All
Like you
right.
guys have got this. I can sense that you've got this. All right. We only had time to do 5 data visualizations tonight, but those are the top 5 right there. So I think you did really well, and I hope this has been helpful. Don't forget that the recording will be available probably by tomorrow. It has to process and all that. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. You're
Alrighty.
welcome.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. You're welcome.
Okay, so what's the starter dashboard for?
Starter dashboard we'll use next week. We didn't get to
Oh,
that tonight. Yeah, I kind of threw that in there in case we could
okay.
get to it, but we didn't. So we will work on that next week. So if you have it, just hold on to it. If not, I'll upload it to next week's resources. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Take
All
care,
right.
everybody.
Thank
Have
you
a
so
wonderful
much.
evening. You're
Thank you.
welcome.
You
Ta-
too. Bye-bye.
Take care. Good night. Bye-bye.
Have a good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night.